They may well ask, why climb the highest mountain?
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
I would have to say memories of my father, fond memories of my father, is when he taught me how to swim, just throwing me in the pool. Or actually, I believe it was one of my uncles throwing me into the pool to my father and learning how to swim. My father taught me how to drink a Coca-Cola. I know it was a photo op for Coca-Cola, but I still remember him teaching me how to drink out of a bottle because I put my mouth all the way around the Coke bottle like it was a nipple. And he was like, no, you put your lips on the edge of it. And he taught me how to drink a Coke. And, I was probably 2.5, maybe almost 3 at that time. But, it's him teaching me little things like that. I still remember, still have good memories about that. My name is John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. My father was the President of the United States of America. My father was assassinated for the whole world to see. My memories in the White House are pretty vague. There's a couple that really, really stand out, and most of them had to do with colors. Being on a golf course with my father, the bright green grass. I remember the bright green grass. It was like the first time I ever seen grass that bright, so it stuck in my mind. Being in his red convertible, the upholstery was red. I remember, playing like I was driving. There was a few other memories, like me in a helicopter, and I remember talking with the pilot, seeing all the gauges in the helicopter, me playing cowboy and Indian. I remember there was a photo shoot of me with a helmet on and a toy rifle. There's a few memories I have. One memory that really sticks out in my mind was my father was getting ready to do a presidential speech, and I was fascinated by the lady that was there, and she had a steamer, and she was actually steaming his suit before he walked on stage. And I was sitting there, I was so fascinated with the machine. My father was gone, and next thing I knew, where is he? And I've seen footage of that day because I actually ran on stage and found my father. And yeah, so a lot of memories, are by what I've seen and come back to me. Just relive the old footage, because there's actually thousands and thousands of photos and videos out there of me as a child. So it does bring back a lot of memories. Christmas and my toy soldier. Jackie had brought me a toy soldier that was probably 2.5, 3 feet tall. I didn't remember it until I saw the toy soldier, and it was like, that was my toy. And I have even told stories about my toy airplane, about how I wanted to leave a toy airplane on my father's grave. The Secret Service said, go pick out a toy. I've actually seen photos of me with that airplane that I didn't even know existed. But when I got to the grave, the Secret Service took my airplane away from me, gave me a PT-109 boat, because it's a big photo op. They like to plan things that go on. And they're like, you're not going to leave your father your plane. They threw it on the ground. I never saw my toy plane again after that. But they gave me a little toy boat to put on there for their photo op. A lot of memories like that I have. I was just thinking about memories of my mom. My mom had finger toes. Her toes were really, really long, like fingers. I've got long toes like that myself. One thing I used to do that I still remember, especially when I see photos of it, me grabbing a hold of my mother's pearls and pulling on them. And I think there's a few different photos of that. I do remember that. My mom was one of the kindest woman in the world. I mean, I would get scolded now and then. She always loved to have her coffee, because it was all photo shoots in the White House. It was always people coming in and doing photos. So she would set up the coffee table with all the important coffee table books on it. And being the little kid I was, I would always mess them up. I would always be sliding them off the coffee table, knocking them on the ground, and I'd get scolded. You got to leave those there. They're in perfect place. Things like that. My mom really was a sweetheart, though. I don't know if they really knew what they were going to get into when they stepped into the White House. And, well, I know they don't. But my father gave it his all, and it ended up costing him his family for trying to fix this country.
The path we have chosen for the present is full of hazards, as all paths are. But it is the one most consistent with our character and courage as a nation and our commitments around the world. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it.
Our CIA and our federal government is like a big cult, and they want to enslave us. They do everything off of us. They can't survive without the people, so they want to enslave. I learned that they enslave people at a very young age. They basically said, we own you. You are ours. Your life is ours. That's what they told me when I was a child. My father said, there's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before he leaves this high and noble office, he wanted to expose their plot of keeping us all enslaved and having a powerful government over us. I'm sure there's many reasons why they wanted to end his life, but it's all controlled by our Secret Service and the satanic cults. They like to run things in the background, and my father didn't want to go with their program, and he was trying to basically do what I'm trying to do right now and bring attention to the people and help the people of this country. I don't know if this is my own memory of a dream I had, but me and him were in the car, and he was crying. He was pounding on the steering wheel, and he was saying, I'm fucking dead. They are going to fucking kill me. And I've never seen my father like that. That's why it's in my mind, in my memory. There was people, journalists and stuff outside of the car while he was having his tantrum. Maybe he realized that how powerful they really are, even though he was the president. The people in the background were so powerful. I really don't know. But he was in tears, and he was like, I am dead. But when he was so emotional like that in the car with me, he stepped out of the car. People started taking pictures, and he must have been such a good actor, because the emotions of all that disappeared. He had a smile on his face. He was standing proud. And I won't forget that. Now, whether, because I was probably only almost 3 years old, I don't know if it's one of my memories or maybe I had a dream, but I vividly remember that.
The nation, the world, mourns John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The funeral cortege moves from the White House to the Capitol, seat of the Congress of the United States. The caisson pauses at the Capitol steps, and from a limousine come the principal mourners, Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy and her children, and with them President Johnson and his wife, and Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the late president's brother.
I learned about death that day. I wasn't around, but I was told by Secret Service. I had to ask them, what is death? What is dead? I didn't, at that young age, I did not understand what death was. And they basically said, your father is not coming home. He's not coming back. I still really didn't get it at that age. I just kind of, okay, so daddy's not coming home. And then that was the same day they had me practicing the salute for hours in my bedroom. That same time they had me go pick out my toy plane to leave on my father's grave. That was all the same day. It was all staged for the photo op. I actually practiced that with, they were teaching me how to salute, and they said, when it's time for you to salute, we will nudge you in the back. That was all about, and then they tried to make me forget about my father after that. When my mother was with Aristotle Onassis, they had me calling him dad, him father. I actually spent a lot of time on Aristotle Onassis's yacht, and I had my own little cabin, and my father's book was on my little bookshelf. Those cabins are really small on those yachts and very hot, no air. And it was actually by the boiler room or the engine room. So, I mean, it was really hot and humid, especially in Greece. It got really humid. But it was like, I kept a blank mind to the fact that, hey, that my father's on that book and he's not coming back. It was almost like they tried to make me forget that my father was the president of the United States. Maybe it was for my own safety. I really don't know. I started being shuffled around, and I could tell at that young age that my life was in danger. I stayed at many different homes for a few days over and over and over again. I would go to a new house, they would check it out. I do remember me and my mother checking into a new home, and they were worried about my safety, so they actually put a bookcase in the room in case there was a drive-by shooting, that the bullets wouldn't go through into my room and hit me. I mean, they spent a lot of time. Even on the yacht, Aristotle Onassis's yacht, I was not allowed to come stick my head up above. At this time, though, they were working on the switch from me to John Jr., George Onassis, the man that stole my identity. So they had me growing my hair long to cover my ears. They had him growing his hair long Ears are like a fingerprint. They won't change. And he had totally different ears. So our Secret Service wanted to make sure that they hid that fact from the public when he came back out. So there was a few years, none of us, not him or me, were in the public eye. Yeah, I mean, it took him a few years after they had totally made me disappear that he came out into the public and started showing off his ears. But nobody I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, because a lot of people realized that little kid that was in the White House is not that man. A lot of people put that together and they wondered, but some people were afraid to say anything, and some people just didn't pay attention. But that's how they plan things and work. I was tortured many times not to remember. I was even told, you can't say anything. You can't do anything. There was times when I was young, I wanted to get revenge. I wanted to take revenge on the people that took my family's lives. And the people, my handlers, I call them my handlers, they were like, you cannot do anything. They're so powerful, they will kill you. So that was always going through my head, especially when the people in power and the presidents were part of the same crime ring. The presidents of the United States were best buddies with the man that stole my identity. How can you go up against the president of the United States? Little old me. So a lot of it was fear that I didn't come out, but and a lot of it was the torture they put me through, the drugs they put me through. They put me through a lot of programs, special ops, MK Ultra programs. They did a lot of testing on me like I was a guinea pig for their government, but they were also building me up. They would do things like put me in sound rooms where the sound was so intense it would drop you to your knees. They put me in chambers. Just a lot of crazy torture. I was telling somebody the other day one of their torture things they did, because it's all Hollywood involved also, so they got access to all the Hollywood sets and the horror movies, and they can do some really crazy things for mind control. At a very young age, they put me on a rack. If you're familiar with the old-time racks, you lay on a table, they put ropes around your legs and ropes around your arms, and they stretch you. That is very painful. They put me on one of those when I was a kid. I was on a movie one time, and they locked my head. It was for a horror movie, I believe, but they locked my head in a vise. And then the man came up and had a drill with a drill bit and kept sticking it right up to my eye like he was going to take my life. And I could not move my head. You know, I closed my eyes every time that drill bit went into my... But it's torture like that over and over again. I remember them saying, how do you make someone forget? And the reply was to that person, torture. Just keep torturing them over and over. They won't want to remember. And that's what they did to me. I still, in my mind, knew who I was. I was John Kennedy, but I didn't want to remember. That it was so painful to remember the tragedy of my mother lying in a puddle of blood after being shot, and my sister lying up against the backboard of a baseball diamond and being told I had to stab my sister with a broken golf club. Emotional torture. I mean, that was my loved ones. That was my family members. You know, the things they do. The government agents telling me I had to sign a confession that I killed my own mother. People shouldn't have to go through what I had to do under the control of our very own government and agents so they could make their money and be wealthy and have the power to keep doing it to others. The career I had in Hollywood, my mother wanted me to climb the ladder, so you call it. She wanted me to be the best. She had the money, she had the resources, she had the millions of dollars to educate me. She wanted me to stay safe and be all around the world. So for 2 weeks, I would be with Mark Chagall in Israel, or for 2 weeks, I would be with another wonderful, great artist. For 2 weeks, I would be with Pablo Picasso. Just a little bit of education from all these artists. She had me in Hollywood. In Hollywood, they gave me their name, Richard Steele. One of the big movies I did was with Doris Day. And being that young, I actually called Doris Day my mom. In my mind, I believed I had a new mother now. I was on several different shows, and a lot of them, it was MK Ultra. I was always told what to do, and at that age, you do what you're told, or bad things will happen. And some of them in Hollywood aren't pretty. But I was on a lot of different shows, and some of the humiliation that they did to me in Hollywood. One thing, they put something in my mouth that made me look like I had a mental illness, let's just say, some of the times. One of the other things that they did, and the cabal do these kind of things, like see how powerful we are. So one of the things they did, my father, John Kennedy, is on a 50-cent half dollar. So one thing that they did, and I seen a picture not too long ago, they put that 50-cent half dollar on my head for a photo shoot. Like, see the control we can do. We can get the little kid, John Kennedy, and put his father's coin on his head. That, I see things like that. I see new things all the time. But that was really emotional, because it's like they were making fun of me. Really emotional. I was always on the go from one place to another, whether it was in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, China, Japan. I was always moved around. Like I'd mentioned, I was in Israel. They kept me on the move. But when I was around 5 years old, I had met the Quigley family. And just like Doris Day in the movie, they told me, this is your new family. I was 5. I called them Max and Dorothy, and they scolded me and said, no, you call us your mother and father now. So at 5 years old, I was placed with the Quigleys, but they were like my handlers. So I was actually there, but I was all over the world, all over the place. Handlers would come get me, like Wayne, and take me to another location where I would spend time. Sometimes they would come get me and take me to Greece. I actually remember Dorothy Quigley taking me to get on Aristotle Onassis' yacht. So it was kind of like a place where I was dropped off and then moved all around. But I was actually told to call Max and Dorothy my mother and father at around the age of 5. Now, whether they started that for my safety, as like a safe house for me for protection, or if it was just a place where they could use me and do their secret mind games and their black ops and all their MK Ultra. I know I was picked up at the Quigleys a few times to do some really dirty deeds. Being a victim of child trafficking with the Quigleys, they were my new family now. They would show me love and kindness sometimes. They would be mean to me like I wasn't part of the family sometimes. It's really a mind game as a child. They could do some really horrendous, evil deeds, and I wouldn't agree with it, but it was like, they're my new family. When I got older with the Quigleys, I knew things weren't right there. I was almost like a slave. I was always being told what to do. I was being handled by the handlers. And one thing they do is to keep you in poverty, so you can't do things, so you can't reach the outside world. They moved me around a lot, but the Quigleys were kind of like my home base from 5 on. The switch was made, like I said, probably around 10 years old. It was right in there. There's very few pictures of me and him together. There's a couple, though. And I would have to say it was from 10 to 12. They put us together even in school to get people used to me and him together. And then I disappeared with the Quigley family, and he became the new John Kennedy Jr. I mean, it was total pre-planned of what they did. They're the best at what they do, and crime is one of the things they do. So when it comes to identity theft and switching people out, they know what they're doing. They plan it ahead. So the plans were probably planning on switching us out. Maybe it was from the day that my father was assassinated. They had the plans all ready to take over the Kennedy family, the Kennedy fortune. I believe my mom was set up to go out with Aristotle Onassis. Maybe they had it in plans to steal his billions before all that. It was all planned. And you can see from going back to pictures how they had me growing my hair long for a few years. From the time I was 10 and being in school with George Onassis, John, the man that stole my identity, I really don't know what to call him, was about 10. But the time that really wrecked my life was in 1975. So there was a 5-year span there from when they took my mother's life and my sister's life. That 5-year span was really mentally hard on me. I thought I had lost all my loved ones, the torture. I'm sure there was that 5 years before they actually had my mother's body double in place, had my mother's body double, had the plastic surgery, gave her dental work, probably gave her speech lessons to become my mother. So from 1975 to 1993, the Jackie Kennedy Onassis the whole world knew was not even my mother. So it was a rough time, but they had it all in the plans, and that's what they do. They plan ahead. My brother, Alexander Onassis, was on a plane. I really wanted to fly with my brother that day. I said, let me go with you. He finally said, okay, kid, come along. Next thing I know, they were taking off down the runway. I was like, they're leaving without me. They can't leave without me. Well, there was a little door on the back of the airplane, and this airplane would go from Greece to the island, and I was always loading alcohol on through this little door. Well, I wanted to go so bad. I knew the door well, and I was like, you're not leaving without me. So I opened the little hatch on the back, and I climbed in the back of the airplane while he was on the runway. To my surprise, when I climbed in to the back passenger seats, the fuselage area from where I would load all the goods to go to the island, there was a man sitting next to him, and he had a revolver in his hand, pointing it at my brother's head. And I was in shock. We took off, and I was like, it's an old rusty gun. That gun will never work. And I was telling that to myself while we're taking off, and we got into midair, and I was telling myself that gun, it's a fake. It's not going to fire. And that's when he fired the weapon into my brother. We immediately took a nosedive. I started clawing at the seats, thinking I could claw my way out of the crash that was about to happen any second. We did crash. They got me out. My brother, Alexander, was dead in my arms. He was gone. They took us to the hospital. Well, these billionaires like my stepfather didn't want to announce that his son was murdered. They made it seem like he died, but they didn't make it seem like he died. They put him in the hospital room and said he was alive, like on life support. But what they were doing was they took the bullet out of his brain. I actually broke my arm, so I was in the hospital. But Aristotle scolded me. He was really, really upset, but he said, don't ever tell anyone that your brother was killed. They keep things like that silent. Aristotle was a very powerful man in the underworld, in the mafia, and he didn't want anybody in the public's eye to know that his family was weak and his son was allowed to be murdered by another family member. So that's the kind of point I was getting at. They don't tell you everything. What you see on the news, oh, well, Alexander Onassis died in a plane crash from a head wound. Well, the head wound was from a bullet, not just from a crash. They covered that stuff up. They covered up what happened to the mechanic that was there that took his life. But I'll never forget looking at that old rusty gun, saying it'll never work, and it ended up taking my brother's life that day. I was 13 years old when that happened. The day my mother was killed was very, very emotional with me. There was a young girl there that I remember. I don't really know why she was there. I remember me and her were on a picnic table, just like, hello, how are you? Me and my mother were in a garage, and we were talking. She was talking, hey, we could start a new life together without all the drama. She was wanting to get away from the Secret Service. I think she was waking up of how evil they really were. And she was like, we can be together as a family again. And the next thing I knew, she walked out of the garage, the shop there. And, just like she had something to do. But then all of a sudden there was a loud series of pow, pow, pow. And I immediately ran outside to see what was going on. And I looked over and I saw my mother laying on the ground. She had her back towards me, but I saw the blood coming out from underneath her body very, very rapidly, a lot of blood. And the minute I saw that, a man grabbed me by my arm, put a gun to my head, and I believe I wasn't quite 15 years old, 14, 15 at that time. But a man put a gun to my head, grabbed me. There was a station wagon. They threw me and ordered me in the back of this station wagon and told me I had to lie on the floor. And this was all at gunpoint. There was another man that had this same little girl, and he was throwing her in the back of the station wagon. And I turned around while all this was going on just to look at my mother, and there was a white pickup truck that pulled right up next to my mother's body. We drove off. They said I had to lay on the floor. I couldn't put my head up. I don't know if I had blacked out at that time or went in shock that it was all really happening. But I remember being in an office environment, kind of like it was a jail, and there was desks, a series of desks, and there was two, I believe they were federal agents of some kind, and they were talking about how much money they just made by killing my mother. And I was sobbing, I was in tears, I still couldn't believe what was going on. They demanded that I signed a confession that I murdered my own mother. I wouldn't do it. I refused to do it. At that time, while I was sitting there at the desk looking at the paperwork that it was demanding that I signed a confession that I murdered my own mother, a man barged into the room, and he had a badge in one hand and a pistol in the other hand. And he said, I'm taking this kid out of here. It all happened so fast, but I was drugged by this man. He took me and put me in a car. We literally drove around for days. He was very worried about someone taking his life for what he did. But we drove around for a few days in circles, I believe. And we ended up back at the Quigley's. I was like, not here again. Not again. I got out of his car, and I was so emotionally messed up. What I did was, there was a horse corral, And I actually was in tears and emotionally a wreck. I put my head in the dirt. I started covering my head with dirt while I was in the horse corral, and I just wanted revenge. There were so many emotions. And the man said, "There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it." So, yeah, things weren't going well at that time. And I was back at the Quigleys again. It was really hard for me because I wanted to take people's lives for what they had done. And I couldn't do anything. I was too young. They told me I was too young. I didn't think I was too young, but just so much pain and misery on that, with what happened there. And with what happened with my sister Caroline, they love to confuse you. They're MK Ultra and wanting you to believe things that aren't true and things that are true. You gotta, like I said, they're the best at what they do, and deception is one of the good things. I mean, it's not good at all, but they're the best at deceiving people. I was at a house back east. I don't remember if we were playing Monopoly. There was a few kids there. We were playing Monopoly or something. And this older man, he was bald. He had a bald spot. He was very pissed off. He ordered the kids to come with him. He was some kind of government official of some kind. But there were some golf clubs in the corner. And this older man, government agent, grabbed a golf club. And he was like, "Come on, kids." But he ordered me to stay there. He's like, "No, you can't come." I heard that so many times in my life. But him and the other kids left. I'm thinking there was 3 or 4 other kids there at that time. But they all left with this older man that had a golf club. So I was sitting in front of this Monopoly board, I believe, all by myself. Somebody showed up and said, "Come on, let's go." I was always told what to do. I always did what I was told. Not always, but when somebody says, "Let's go," I was there. We got in a pickup truck. My mother was in the middle. There was the guy driving, I believe it was a white, probably Chevy pickup. There was a guy driving, my mother, and then me. We pulled up, and the man told me, "Now take this golf club, and I want you to go stab your dead sister. She's laying right over there." And he told me, "If you don't go do that, I'm going to kill your mom." That's what he told me. I was crying. I was shaking. I was an emotional wreck. I didn't know what to do except do what I was told. So I grabbed this broken golf club and I went over and I seen my sister laying there against the backstop of a baseball field. I was like, okay, they're going to kill my mother if I don't. And now that I think back, they wanted my fingerprints on that golf club. They wanted my sister's blood on the end of that golf club. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't physically poke my dead sister that was laying there dead with that golf club. I went back to the pickup. I got in the passenger side. I think I threw the golf club, but I reached over my mother and I clawed the man behind the steering wheel's face with my fingernails. I went berserk. I tried killing him. You know, I was just a young kid at that time, but I wanted him dead for what he was trying to have me do. He calmed me down. He got on the radio. I remember him talking to other agents on his radio. What he was telling them, I really don't know. It's almost like I went into shock that day. Just the fact of what was going on was really confusing for me. Him wanting me to go stab my dead sister. I couldn't figure it all out. All I know is my sister was now dead and my mother was there and her life was being threatened. Our Secret Service does that a lot because we were also on a plane one day. This was right after that incident. My mother was on the plane and there was a man abusing her. That man told me I had to go out and meet my new sister. I was like, I don't have a new sister. My sister's dead. I believe they had raped my mother that day on that plane so I would do what they told me to do. I got off the airplane. They had me handed me a puppy dog to take with me, but I got off the airplane and I'm looking around and this girl comes up to me and says, "Hi, I'm your new sister." I immediately said, "Hell no." I didn't go with the program. There was a police officer, and he's been in many photos with Denzel Washington and others. He was definitely a Secret Service agent in a New York policeman, I believe it was a New York policeman uniform. But he came to me and he said, "I can help you." I said, "Well, I need some help. If you can help me." I remember him saying, "I knew your father. I'll help you." I said, "Look, my mom was just raped. My sister, they said, was murdered. I was telling this cop everything that had just happened in the last few days of what they were doing." The pilot at that time was standing on the side next to the policeman, and the policeman looked at him and said, "The kid's not going to go with our program." Well, they grabbed me up, took me back on the plane, and the man that I believe had just raped my mother literally started kicking me, hitting me. I was on the ground and he kept kicking me, and I believe I just became unconscious. So the whole thing of their cover-ups and not going with the program was extremely emotional, and just remembering it is extremely emotional to this day. But the story needs to be told on what they do and how they do it, the strong-arm tactics that they use. I'm trying to expose what really happened to them, and they need justice. They really do. It's really sad at what these people will do at the top and how they cover things up, how they take lives, and it's all over power and money. Yeah, the cover-ups are huge of what people believe and what they think. I'm trying to expose the truth and expose the lies that people have been believing that are being told by these people in power, the billionaires. We had just filed a lawsuit here in Arizona for justice for my mom so we can get it public. I really don't know how that's gonna turn out. We just sent it in the mail. Hopefully it'll help in our cause to wake up people and help get the justice for the murder of my family. Getting away from the Quigleys was really emotional. It was hard because, like I said, they were my family. Then a lot of the things that started happening, the attempts on my life from my brothers, the way that my loved ones turned against me, some so-called loved ones that I considered family. A lot of it was the attempts on my life, the things that were happening where I knew, well, these attempts on my life are coming from the Quigley family. I had mentioned many things about my relatives being unalived. There was many times people would come over, young girls and things, and say, "Can you help me, please? I got myself involved." And they wouldn't speak because they were afraid to tell me. But it was basically the devil worship, the cult, the secret society of the underworld. It woke me up, but it took me a lot of... God was with me because there was so many attempts on my life with the Quigleys. Going with my brother to an airport, standing in front of a dumpster while a little 15-year-old kid had a weapon pointed at my head, and my very own brother saying, "Pull the trigger or take his life." From being poisoned, being sick, being in the hospital, and I was deathly ill from poison more than once. It was just all adding up. Even my cousins that I didn't even know my cousins existed, trying to take my life. And one cousin telling me, "Yeah, my father wants to kill you. He's planning to kill you. I just thought you should know." There was a lot of attempts on my life from my own so-called family. and why that was all being done. I got a big mouth. I don't mind trying to help and get the truth out for these people that have been victims, and they knew it all the way from going to our FBI. They did child trafficking and switching, and I'd go to the FBI with no results, none. I went several occasions and said, you know, there's child trafficking going on, there's murders going on, this person's missing, and it was all covered up because it's all the same crime ring, and I'm just trying to expose that crime ring. In organized crime, when one family would have a child and then that child was trafficked to another family, I was basically told to explain that it was for the safety of that child, so nobody knew actually within the crime families, because the crime families are brutal, evil. They're always wanting more. They're always trying to go to the top. They're always trying to unalive someone at the top to gain their power, their resources. Ted Gunderson, wonderful man, tried to do the same thing I'm trying to do. Tried to do the same thing my father tried to do. But Ted Gunderson was an FBI agent at the top, and he was exposing what they really do, the child trafficking, the facts about my father's execution by these people. He ended up passing away before his story got really big, but they suppressed his story also. I mean, this was a top man in the FBI saying child trafficking is huge. All these children go missing because of this evil cult and what they do. And he was basically saying the FBI, the CIA, and our Secret Service is in on it all. So I hope we can share and get some results from what these men probably died, like my father, trying to help this country and help the problems of this country, because they don't want no one to know what's really going on. They don't.
Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free. In short, every American ought to have the right to be treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated.
I was always deceived by the handlers. They always made me look forward to the future. They would do things like say, this ranch is yours. You know, and I mean a nice cattle ranch. They would take me to a cattle ranch, beautiful place, but they would say, this place is going to be yours someday. You just hold on. But it's all deception. They would say, by the time you turn 40, you know, all that money that's in safekeeping for you will be given to you. Just wait. And then when you turn 40, you're like, okay, now I'm a lot older. And they'll say, well, patience is a virtue. Things aren't going as fast as they're planned. Now it's probably going to be when you're, 50. But it's a lot of deception, and it goes right with the Q plan of just sit back and wait. I've sat back and waited my whole lifetime. I'm 64 years old now, and I waited too long to get anything done. I don't have much more time to wait to get the truth out, but that's the plan. We only live so long, and if these hidden societies that go on, that have their message in stone, time is on their side. So it's all a big stall, and they keep getting away with their evil deeds. They're stealing of all the funds and harming people. The longer that goes on, the more they keep going.
This must give you the greatest possible satisfaction, because never in history has so much depended upon one people. And I think never in history have one people been so willing to assume that responsibility. What you do here, what progress you make, what dedication you demonstrate, makes a significant difference.
It was a real struggle when I first came out to try to share my story. I do believe it's been about 9 years now, and I was actually with a gal. She's passed away now, but Brenda. We were in my car. We were actually listening to an AC/DC song on the radio, and it was like I don't care. I got to get my story out, Brenda. You know, she was like my friend at the time, so I got it all off my chest of, hey, I'm John Kennedy. The world needs to know. I was in really, really bad health, a lot of pain. I didn't think, at the time, it was like, I thought my story would just blow up because I was contacting all the media. They're probably going to take my life before my story gets out too far. But I wanted it out because I basically made up my mind when I was ill. I figured my life didn't matter compared to the story. The story was bigger than my life itself. And I think that was, well, I'm guessing about 9 years now. It's still been a struggle. Every day doing videos, sharing, trying to get this story out because I'm little David and they're Goliath, and they run the country. They run our mainstream media. They run the internet. They run everything. I would get on to make a video on like Facebook, and I wouldn't have any viewers. Nobody was seeing them. Nobody was watching them. I even paid Facebook to advertise, and then come to find out they took my money, but they didn't advertise it to no one. I was just being totally hindered. One lady came to me, and her name was Jackie Goldman, and she said, I'll help you write a book. And I was thrilled because the torture, it wouldn't allow me to put anything down that I could even read. For years, I mean, for 20 years, I wanted to share my story. I would try to put it in book form because I can't spell it out in my head. I get too frustrated, too confused. So I started putting it on video cassette. This was like 25, 30 years now. Then those videos, those voice recordings, I should say, disappeared. And then I was like, oh, they took them. They're going to kill me now. They know what I was doing. So I tried to get the story out for a very long time in my mind, mentally, and being prepared. But finally, this gal, Jackie, came to me and said, I'll help you. And I was like, I was so thrilled just to be able to get it out. So we spent a few months video chatting. She looked at all my videos from Facebook, put the story together. She had questions, we would video chat. She got it in book form. So it's been out a little over a year. I wish it would, I pray that it would do a lot better, but it's like everything else, being hindered. If you put yourself in my position, I'm the son of a president. I'm trying to say, this is the problems we have, and it's not going as fast as I expected. Instead of having a few thousand views on the internet, it should be millions of views. I am gaining a lot of followers. A lot of people have heard my story, believe my story. I have seen more love. I did not know there was so much love in this world because I had lived such a terrible life of tragedy and sadness. You know, it hasn't taken off as fast as I would like, but the people supporting me, the people sharing, the people making videos, giving my book to the library, it really affects my heart, the love that I have seen. True patriots that can see, you know, justice has not been carried out for me and my loved ones. They're willing to go out of their way, which is huge. It is so appreciated. Just the fact that they will push that share button or spend their day making videos, sharing my books, sharing my story. It really means a lot. And I hope it gets bigger. I hope it grows. I always want to tell thank you to everybody that has helped me. The lions, I call them lions because they go out of their way to help and help others and help share the story. But I can never thank them enough. I really can't, because I can't get this story out by myself. There's no way. It's all the good hearted, kind people that are willing to go out of their way to help, it's gonna get us all justice. Jackie, that I was just talking about, Jackie Goldman, helped me write this. This is called Stolen Identity, Unveiling the Real John Kennedy Jr. by John Kennedy Jr. It's my hope, one of my visions, is to see everybody have access to what's in this book, what they actually did to the son of a president, what they are doing in power, because what's in this book doesn't go along what people have learned, even in the schools in history. They have put so much fraud out there, so much deception out there of what really happened, and this book exposes it all. It changes history. I thank everybody. The reviews on Amazon are absolutely wonderful. There's not many because not a whole lot of people have heard about this book yet. So it would be awesome if we could get this out where people could read it and, use their own judgment. I am so very truthful on what's in this book. And like I said, it puts my life in danger. And I think the more people that know the story makes me safer. And this book right here, it just came out a month ago, The Historian's Tale, The Amazing Return of President Kennedy's Son. And this was written by Mary Maxwell, a wonderful lady with a heart of gold. This is actually on Lulu, but it just came out, and it's a good read. It is. Right now, my whole life revolves around trying to get my truth out. I do have things that I've never had my whole life. I met Robin, and my life has turned around. I have a nice truck and trailer and a motorbike. I don't have time to spend with those things, the material things like that. It's all about trying to get the truth out, doing videos, making stories, sharing, talking with people, trying to figure out what their next move will be. I have so many plans on trying to help make this world a better place. I just stay so busy. Sure, I need a break every now and again, just because it's really mentally exhausting sharing my story over and over and over again. So yeah, a ride on the Harley, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, just even if it's around the block, helps clear my head. Something about being in the wind and forgetting all the problems and all the evils of this world, and just letting them blow right by, where I can start again. It clears my head, where I can share that story for the 1,000th time or 10,000th time. My big goal, my dreams, my wishes are that this story gets out to each and everyone around the world. Not the lies that everybody's been told, but the truth of what really going on at the top, the rulers of the world and what they do at the top to keep us in chains, keep us in bondage, control us. That they're so powerful of what they can do with us as human beings. We all need to wake up to their game plan. I'm trying to expose their game plan. It means more than life to me to expose what they can do, what they are doing to us, more than life itself. And that's my dream, that's my wishes, that's in my prayers, that we expose the corruption, the evil. I can't let the victims and my family members that have suffered from all the injustice, and there's so much of it, the world really needs to know. It keeps me going. Sometimes I don't want to keep going, and I just remember I have to. It's something I have to do in this lifetime before I leave this planet, this world.
I want to express my thanks to all of you. We admire what you're doing, and even more important, we're very grateful to all of you.